and I was there from the age of 8. Never really expected to go in and become a boxing promoter, but it happened, and we've gone from strength to strength, and I think the sport is growing worldwide, particularly in the UK right now, and we're breaking boundaries, we're pushing the barriers, and making the shows as big as possible. Of course, Joshua against Parker is going to be in front of 80,000. We had Joshua Klitschko in front of 90,000. So it's been incredible, and the sport continues to grow over here in the UK.
Now, you said this was something you really didn't envision yourself doing, because your dad was a legendary promoter out in the UK. What did you want to do when you were growing up?
Well, I'm working in sports is the best thing for a failed sportsman to do, really. Every young kid wants to, dream of actually playing a sport or becoming a professional sportsman, but I wasn't really good at any of those. So, working in the business and the industry is the next best thing. I was working in sports marketing. I was working in golf management, representing golfers on the European and PGA Tour. Then, with Matchroom, we went into the world of online gaming, and we was working with all the major online sites to create all the televised poker tournaments around the world, and that was good fun. And then we started a tournament a while back called Prizefighter, and it was really to attract the casuals back into the sport. It was an 8-man tournament on one night, 4 quarterfinals, 2 semis, and a final all in one night, and it sort of reinvigorated the sport over here. But I never thought that we'd start to represent fighters again. But because of the success of the Prizefighter tournament, and I think because it was a bit of a one-man show in promotional terms here under Frank Warren, fighters were interested to work with us, and at the time I was the fresh face of boxing, and the momentum really grew from there.
Two-part question. A, do you still golf? And B, do you play poker?
I haven't played golf for about 2 years.
Oh,
it's terrible, really.
Oh, absolutely terrible.
It's a huge sin. I used to play probably once a week.
Okay.
And obviously with the boxing, it's just you don't really have many spare weekends, and when you do have a spare weekend, to take 4 or 5 hours out, it's going to get me executed from the missus. So I haven't played golf for a while. I love poker. I love playing poker. And every time I'm in Vegas, I'll always try and sit down and grab a couple of hours at the tables.
I know the one thing with golf is if the wife allows you to do it, you take the opportunity. So I definitely understand that. And
I know the problem is with my schedule.
Oh, absolutely.
If I had a free weekend and told her I was going golfing, it's not going to go down well.
I definitely hear you on that one. And, you look at the scene out in Europe just in general, and, mainly the UK, and it's really taken it by storm in the last few years. You had, in the 90s and the early 2000s with Chris Nassim, you had Lennox Lewis, when they were really on top of their game. And now you're seeing this resurgence. David Hayes been around for about the last 7-8 years. A guy you represent, Tony Bellew, and you got Anthony Joshua, Katie Taylor, and the list goes on. It's become the point to where it's, from a lot of people in boxing that, and even starting now, the fans are getting it, that the UK is becoming the place to be for boxing instead of the United States. Do you get that same sense as well?
Yeah, although I do think that, the growth of a sport like boxing is really dictated by the interest of broadcasters. But also, it's a double-edged sword, because the interest from broadcasters only is there when a sport is growing and there's actually someone driving the sport. I think in America, the sport is also hot as well, I have to say, and I think you've got, of course, Showtime and HBO always competing against each other. You've got ESPN coming in now with Top Rank, putting on some good shows. You've got other platforms launching. And in the UK, a sport that was only really aired by Sky Sports in the last 10 years, now we have 4, 5, 6 broadcasters showing boxing every weekend in the UK. So I think that, yes, from a focal perspective, in terms of events, the UK is leading the way. But I do feel like the US is having a resurgence right now in boxing. And I do feel like over here and in the UK, fighters and promoters are in the US. I think fighters, promoters, and managers are willing now to put on the fights that the fans want, and we have to do that if we're going to keep evolving the sport. I think the age that we live in social media means that you can't really sleep at night without making fights that the public want, because it's in your face every day. And for someone like me who, reads Twitter and Instagram and Facebook all day, every day, I know what the fans want, and I know the fights they want to see as well. So we can't ignore it, and without giving them what they want, the growth is not going to be there.
Because for the longest time, and the perception from fighters that top line fighters that I've talked to has been, it was always more often than not, it was the promoter that was in the way of blocking these fights from happening. And why do you think it took so long for these fights to finally happen, or everyone seemed like they, as they say, put their egos in check and made the fights that are best for the sport?
I think that comes really from the pressures of the broadcasters. And I think we all have to be proactive in trying to make the fights that people want. So the broadcasters have to push the promoters have to push the managers and the advisors, and those guys have to push the fighters. Generally, the fighters want to be involved in the biggest fights that with the most at stake and with the most money on the table. So I just think it really comes from the wills of the promoters, but also the pressure that broadcasters will put on. For instance, in America right now, like I said, those three right now, ESPN, Showtime, and HBO, are really trying to outdo everyone, which is great. And in the UK, you've got promotional companies and broadcasters competing against each other, so it's great. And long may that continue. I think the more competition, the better.
I thought it was pretty cool, and you talked about Top Rank earlier, and I wasn't going to bring this up, but I thought it was really cool. It was about maybe almost 10 days ago that you were in the United States, for the Top Rank card out in California. And what was that like working with Bob Arum and seeing how he does things and how things are done by someone like ESPN?
Well, I think from talking about Bob Arum, first of all, it was inspiring really for me. I mean, there's a guy 86 years of age, full of energy, full of passion. Of course, we know full of knowledge. But, I sit there and I think, blimey, I'm 52 or 48 years older. He's 48 years older than me.
Yeah.
And he still has the same drive, the same passion that he probably had when he was my age. So it was, it was interesting to watch. Great to talk to him. The world has changed, and the way you market and promote fights has changed, and he knows that. I don't think he's as active in those terms anymore, but he's a character, and in every sport you need characters, not just, especially in boxing, not just in the ring but out of the ring as well. You saw those two promoting a fight at Madison Square Gardens this weekend, with Don King and Bob Arum, and some of the footage was great. It was brilliant. And watching how ESPN do things. Obviously, we've promoted now our first show on HBO. We've got our next show on HBO on April the 28th. So we're learning in the US market all the time, both from a production point of view and an event perspective, but also understanding the fans, because they are different people and it is a different culture to the UK. But the truth is, everybody loves to have a good time and watch great sport.
What have you learned personally in how you do things? For the for the card you promoted last year with Daniel Jacobs, and then being a part of the card a couple weeks ago on ESPN with Top Rank. What have you learned just about how things work in the United States, and how you've learned to promote? Maybe you've promoted differently out in the UK compared to here so far in the States.
Well, I've learned that in the UK it's much more of a night out. There seems to be more focus on a night out, to dress up with your friends and go out and have fun. Of course, I think in boxing terms, in America, I think it's just more of a casual experience. People aren't dressed up as much, and people just are very chilled out there. They don't seem to have the same passion and emotion for fighters as we do in Britain. I think one of the reasons for that is because fighters in Britain are built in their hometowns and their home cities, so you can associate with them a lot more easily. You know, like for example, you get guys from, I don't know, Canada and Omaha and Alabama fighting in New York. But if you're from Brooklyn or you're from, you know, New York or Manhattan, how do you have that same emotional affiliation with those guys compared to the people from their hometown? And you see that with the likes of Terence Crawford and Deontay Wilder. When they're boxing in Omaha and Alabama, the atmosphere is crazy. Yet when they're boxing maybe in New York or Las Vegas, it's a little bit different. So we tend to build the fighters in their hometown first before they become national stars. And that's something that I want to look at in America. You know, I feel like fighters need to be built more. If they're from Miami, box them in Miami. You know, don't necessarily take them to Vegas or to LA, and so on.
Was that hard for you when you first came here? To see, the difference, like you brought up Omaha, you brought up Alabama, and you brought up New York. How big of an adjustment was there for you? What was that reaction in your mind when you're sitting there, you're observing, and you're looking around? What was your initial reaction to all of that compared to what you're accustomed to?
Just it was a lot quieter. I mean, when you come to our shows, you really see people singing and dancing and having a great time, making loads of noise, and that can be done in America. But like I said, sometimes as well, there's quite a big comping culture in America with tickets. So, like, if someone's been given a ticket to a show, you can't expect them to have the same mentality as someone that's spent their hard-earned money to support someone particular on the card. And I think a lot of people are at these shows, they don't even know who's fighting in America, They've got their hand on a ticket, but they don't actually know why they're there. And that's a concern as well. But again, I've only done one show there, we're learning all the time. But as I said before, people love to have a great time. People love to watch great sport. So it shouldn't be that difficult.
For what people in the United States know you for is being the lead promoter for the unified heavyweight champion, Anthony Joshua. And we'll start with this. How did you find out about Anthony?
Find out about Anthony Joshua?
Yes.
So, I was working with Carl Froch at the time, towards the end of his career, and he was training up at the EIS, which is the English Institute of Sport, with Rob McCracken, who's the Olympic trainer. And I just remember being up there with Froch, and I just heard this noise, and it was just like something was being taken off his hinges. And I turned around, and it was Anthony Joshua hitting the heavy bag. And I said to Rob McCracken, "Who's that?" And he said, "That's Anthony Joshua. Great young talent." And then from there, obviously, he went and got silver in the world, should have won gold, and then went on and won gold in the Olympics. And his rise in the amateur game was very fast. I mean, he only had just over 40 amateur fights, which compared to these elite amateurs is nothing at all. And obviously, once he won that Olympic gold in London, we were desperate to sign him, and we went from there.
Did you see, based off that hit, when you heard him hit the heavy bag, were you thinking in your mind, were you like, this is the guy, this is the future of the division?
There's a real lack, or there especially has been a real lack of quality heavyweights, especially in Britain, but in the world really, who have the look, who have the speed, who have the power. And you could tell by the way he was hitting the bag, his speed and his power, but it was the look of him. 6'6", looks like he's carved out of stone. Just a perfect athlete, really. And sort of the things that go through your mind there as a promoter is, well, if this kid can fight, he's cracked it. And luckily he can fight, and he has cracked it because he's got everything, all the attributes you'd want from a heavyweight, and he has the look. He has the image, he has the smile, he's got it all. Hello?
No, I'm here. Oh, I didn't know you were done at it. I thought you caught off for a second. No, now you look at him because you said he definitely has all those things. And when do you think it finally clicked for him in your mind? Was there a particular fight where you were like, "Here we go. Now he is going to be it"?
The Dillian White fight was very important to him because that was a personal fight. You know, they boxed in the amateurs. Dillian White beat him, and there was a lot of beef in that fight, and he let that get to him, and he ended up fighting on emotional. He got hurt in the second round of that fight. It was a brilliant fight, and that was really his sort of coming out fight. That was his maturing fight, and from there he's been a lot more disciplined. You know, he won the world title in the fight after that one against Charles Martin, and really he's been a lot more effective and economical in his work. His training and his setup is second to none there. But I think that was the fight that sort of matured him into, you know, I think at times he just felt like, you know, he could walk through anyone and knock them out. And then obviously he got hit back when he was trading punches and realised, listen, this is a dangerous division. Anything can happen when these guys are trading leather. So he had to be a bit smarter. And you know, we've seen that. Sometimes he does fight on pure emotion. But I think that fight was really the turning point in his career. It's the first big championship fight where he had to go into the trenches.
In your mind, is that the biggest knock on Anthony, still fighting too much on emotion in your mind, or you think he's really calmed that down?
He's matured a lot. I mean, he still loves to fight. He loves to have a tear-up. You know, he talks about the fight that he really wants is Dillian White again, because he loved it, he enjoyed it. And, you know, when he talked about the Wilder fights and Parker fights, and all, you know, these are very, very dangerous fights. But these are fights that Anthony Joshua wants. These are the ones that he wants to be involved with. These are the ones that will really define his legacy. So he always has the ability to fight on emotion. I mean, you saw that in the Klitschko fight. It was very technical, but at the same time, you know, he fought off emotion, and in the end, I think that won him the fight. So I think he just has to be careful not to, you know, in a fight where there's been a hype build-up, and that could be the Wilder fight, that he's just got to, you know, understand that there's a game plan to be followed, and if he does that, he should win comfortably.
You know, people talk about since Floyd Mayweather is right now he's retired again, and it looks like we're near the end of the line with Manny Pacquiao. People are saying we're looking for a new face of boxing. Is, in your mind, Eddie, is Anthony Joshua already there? And if you don't think he is, how close is he to coming to that point?
Well, I think he's the biggest star in world boxing. You know, we've got a lot of work to do in various different markets. I mean, the US market is somewhere that we have to probably pay some more and closer attention to. But the problem is, when you've got the fan base here and the draw power here that he's got, it's quite difficult to just leave it behind and you know, in search of other markets. But he is the world heavyweight champion, not the British heavyweight champion. So it's important for us to grow his profile around the world as well. I think he needs to become a bigger star in America. But worldwide right now, in terms of star status, I see him as the biggest star in the sport.
If you guys, you know, you're talking about the States, and have you looked at the blueprint, I guess you can really say, you know, looking at Lennox Lewis? You know, a lot of early fights in the early part of his career were in the UK and around Europe, and then when he finally made the move to the United States, but it was a very calculated move. Have you studied Lennox's path or talked to him about how he was able to become a big star here in the United States?
No, I think the landscape was a lot different there as well. You know, I think that because of the competitors and, you know, the opponent list that was available, you know, when Lennox was boxing, it was a lot easier for him to become a star, and particularly a star in America. You know, I mean, there were so many great fighters around that era that AJ might be limited more to the Deontay Wilders and the Joseph Parkers of this world. And I think one of the problems with Joshua is he's moving so quickly that, you know, ultimately his defining fights are happening now. In his 20th fight, in his 21st fight, in his 22nd fight. And there's a very good chance that after his 22nd fight, he will be the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. And when you look at, you know, the likes of Lennox Lewis, I mean, he had so many fights in America and so many opponents available. You know, I don't know, Tommy Morrison and Shannon Briggs and Holyfield and Botha and Rahman and Tyson. All those fights, Klitschko, I think it was his last one, was all in America. So, when you look at the potential opponents for Joshua, there's nowhere near those kind of that kind of depth of quality. So he's diving into these fights much sooner than expected.
And you brought that up, and I asked Deontay Wilder this question before his fight a few weeks ago, and I'll present the same thing to you. You look at the heavyweight division, people call it the Big Four: Wilder, Ortiz, Joshua, and Joseph Parker. Deontay Wilder fought Luis Ortiz. Anthony will be fighting Joseph Parker in a little less than 2 weeks. From base what you're saying, do you think that crop of heavyweights with Lennox, Tyson, Holyfield, and all them is better than this Big Four current crop of top heavyweights?
I think the four you mentioned are very similar to those. That was a great era, wasn't it? Tyson,
Yeah.
Holyfield, Lewis. But I do think Joshua's right up there, and I do think Wilder is a very dangerous heavyweight. I'm not saying that technically he's the best fighter in the world, but he is very dangerous. And, he could have caused problems to all those names that you mentioned because of his punch power. Ortiz, maybe, but I think Joseph Parker is the toughest fight out there for Anthony Joshua technically. I think it's a much tougher fight technically than the Wilder fight. I'm not saying it's quite as dangerous, but with Wilder, it's a much easier job in my opinion, but it's a fight that does carry danger. With Parker, you've got a very fast, very light puncher with great feet that's going to be moving a lot, and I think technically it's going to be a very difficult fight for Anthony Joshua. So I think those top level guys are up there with the quality of the names that you mentioned. We just need the new breed to come forward. We need 10 rather than 4, because these guys, Joshua's got another 5, 6, 7, 8 years left in the sport. So we want as many opponents as possible and as many tests as possible for Anthony Joshua. But certainly there are some brilliant heavyweights out there at the moment, but more the merrier, please.
You talked about Joseph Parker, and that is the big fight coming up for Anthony. And and I was going to ask you, and you really answered a lot of my questions about Joseph Parker. And was that the goal, from the outside when you were trying to make this fight, that you have a plan in mind? 'Cause people say you didn't have a plan in mind. Was this the intention all along? Let's get Joseph Parker in the ring. If Anthony does what he has to do, then yes, he will fight Deontay Wilder next. Or was there any hardships in making this fight now?
Of course, to make the Wilder fight as an undisputed fight is just huge. But when you can get your hands on any belt, you have to strike while you can. And when you get the opportunity for an undisputed fight, you definitely have to strike, because they don't really come around very often. There's so many politics, there's so many mandatories, that it's very difficult to secure those undisputed fights. So, for us, once the Joseph Parker fight was available, we had to snatch it. And if the Deontay Wilder fight is available, we have to snatch it. Because sooner or later we're going to get a mandatory, or someone's going to get beat, or someone's going to sign a new contract, or a 2-fight contract with another fight, or, so we need to make sure that whilst the opportunities present themselves, we take them. So Parker wasn't always the plan after Takam, but once he beat Fury and he was available, it was the obvious choice, because it was a deal that was a lot easier to make than the Wilder fight.
Because people still really don't know Joseph Parker. People know Anthony Joshua. In your mind, has it been hard to try to promote someone that a lot of people really still don't fight? They know the A side, but they really don't know too much about the B side.
I think they know him in the UK pretty well. He's been aired quite a lot over here. I think America may be slightly different, but all you need to know is that he's a 24-0 world heavyweight champion, who punches hard, who has great speed, who moves very well, who has a great chin, who's very durable. But this is a unification fight between 2 undefeated heavyweight world champions, and 2 fast ones, 2 young ones, 2 fearless ones. So that should sell itself, really. And again, I think the most dangerous fight so far of Joshua's career. I think this will be his toughest test.
The fight's on Showtime here in the United States, and there was a little bit of a bidding. The HBO had a right to place a bid for this fight in the United States, and Showtime ended up matching what HBO had to offer. What is that like in terms for you? Do you have a preference, of where Anthony fights, or you just want what's best for him, best for you, best for the sport?
Yeah, I mean all of those. Um, Showtime were the ones that backed Anthony before anyone else did. So I always feel an association and alignment with them. But of course, there's every network in the game wants Anthony Joshua on their channel. So it's very difficult to obviously manage his expectations, but also try and do what's right from an ethical sense in terms of backing and giving our existing broadcasters the chance to continue having Joshua on the network, but also understanding that there's a lot of guys breathing down our neck to try and win the race to air Anthony Joshua. So this fight will be on Showtime, and then once this fight is over, we'll sit down with Showtime and try and figure out a new longer-term deal and see where that goes.
A couple more questions, Eddie, and thank you for the time today. It's greatly appreciated. What are you looking for particularly? Because now, like you said, this is the last fight on Anthony's contract with Showtime. What are you looking for in his next deal? Is there anything in particular that you're looking for? Or is it just open to Showtime, or is HBO, ESPN, and everywhere else going to be a part of this process?
Well, I think that we're going to get multiple offers from multiple networks. But like I said, Showtime have been very good to us, so they'll get first crack of the whip in that respect. It's not necessarily about money. Of course, that's important for any athlete, but it's also about the vision that the broadcaster have got with Anthony. We want to know what they're going to do to promote Anthony Joshua. I mean, he has some great commercial partners in the US, in Under Armour and Beats and brands like that. So, like anything, when you link up with a brand or a broadcaster, we want to know the plan. What is the plan? Obviously, there's big pay-per-view fights out there with Deontay Wilder, but how are you going to help us grow the brand of Anthony Joshua in the US? And that might end up being just as important as the money.
And a lot of people always say it's about the money, but it's good to hear for once it's not all about the money. And, a lot of... and I agree with that 100%. You look around and everyone's talking about Joshua Wilder, and Joseph Parker just happens the guy to be there. And, I talked to... And I want to read this quote to you that that Deontay Wilder said about you to me, and I want to get your quick thoughts. He says, "You are the reason I don't feel Eddie has any confidence in Anthony Joshua of beating me." That's why he's trying to get these checks. What do you make when Deontay Wilder says you're the reason why Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder has not been signed yet?
I don't make the decisions in terms of who Anthony Joshua fights. He does, and so does his training team. We put the opportunities in front of him. There is no one more in the world of boxing that Anthony Joshua wants to fight than Deontay Wilder. And there is nothing that I would be able to do to stop Anthony Joshua from taking that fight. What is my job is to make sure that the right deals, the right business is constructed for Anthony Joshua. We make the right career moves. And since his debut, every move has been completely faultless throughout his career. So we know exactly what we're doing. Of course, I understand Deontay Wilder. He's desperate. There isn't a fight out there now that a broadcaster wants to see Deontay Wilder in, other than Anthony Joshua. For Anthony Joshua, he could fight half a dozen guys quite easily, and everybody would be happy. Everyone would be over the moon. But Anthony Joshua wants to be the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, and that doesn't come around very often, that opportunity. So if it's here and if it presents itself after the Parker fight, we must get it made. And we must get it made in 2018. So for Deontay, he just needs to calm down and understand that he will get his payday one day soon. Because there is only one payday for Deontay Wilder, and that is Anthony Joshua. That's why he is so desperate. That's why he screams and shouts and hollers. But one thing he has to understand is that Joshua wants to fight him badly. I want Joshua to fight Wilder badly because it's the biggest fight in world boxing. And as a promoter, the biggest fight in world boxing is one that, of course, you want to put on. So I don't think Wilder will have to wait that long. But I do think that the Parker fight is a tougher fight than Wilder for us, technically. So really, at the moment, absolutely all eyes is on March 31st, because until Anthony Joshua beats Joseph Parker, it's irrelevant even talking about the Parker fight, the Wilder fight.
Is the March 31st card, is it sold out yet? I haven't really seen too much. I know you guys were close.
We released the final. We had some coach tickets that we've just released, so we've sold about 77,000 so far. So we've got about 1,000 or so to go, but they've just been released last week.
When you hear 77,000 tickets, what goes through your mind?
I still pinch myself on it sometimes, because I remember when we were doing shows and I was struggling to sell 1,500. You know, I mean, the phenomenon is Anthony Joshua. He's British boxing, but he's also Anthony Joshua. You know, we're selling out 15,000, 20,000 for other events regularly, but those kind of numbers are hugely impressive. But it's the event. It's a night out. It's an experience, and it's the Anthony Joshua show. The undercards are always great. You know, the ring entrances, the music, the production, the fights, everything's absolutely first class. And people come and they want to come back. So it's brilliant. You know, it's extremely rewarding, and it's extremely rewarding to watch someone like Anthony, who we've had from a debut, progress into the biggest star in world boxing. So it's things are going great. We just got to get the win on March 31st.
What do you make when people say you are now the best promoter in boxing? When people say that, because it's been around in American publications, and I know it's been in European publications as well. When you hear that, what do you think?
Flattering. You know, I think if I'm going to be brash about it, I'd struggle to see who's better. But that's not just because I'm great. That's because I don't think there are many great promoters out there anymore. You know, and I don't really see Bob Arum, and I don't mean this disrespectfully at all, but as, if you like, a full-time promoter anymore. You know, he has a brilliant business in Top Rank that drive, you know, they're the engine behind the shows in Top Rank, but he's, you know, you can't have that same kind of engine and non-stop relentlessness that at that age. It's just impossible. So at the moment, I'm the relentless one. I'm the one constantly trying to push the boundaries, just like maybe my dad or Bob Arum or Don King did when they were 40, you know? Mm-hmm. So I think that, yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of work to do in terms of perfecting my craft, but right out there right now, yeah, I think we probably are the leading promoters, because we're very good. And I don't think the competition is what it was. You know, would we have been the best promoters in the world when it was Arum and it was Don King and it was, you know, all these different? Maybe not. But right now, in terms of the competition and what we're doing, yeah, I'd say we were the front runners. And the next goal for us is to expand to and hopefully take control of the American market. You know, and that's something we hope to do in 2018.
This will be a two-part question. What do you feel you need to do to take over in the United States? And you talked about there's some things you still need to do to improve. What do you feel like you need to improve on?
I think that in terms of the American market, we need the right association and partnership with the right broadcaster, someone that's going to give you the freedom and flexibility, and more importantly, the dates to grow a championship stable. Now, of course, our only US fighter at the moment is Daniel Jacobs. Great start. But until we get 12, 14, 16 dates from an American broadcaster, we can't go out there and sign numerous and multiple world champions. If we get those dates from a partner, we have the brand, we have the reputation, and we have the ability to go and build a frightening stable of fighters. And that's what we'll hopefully be doing once we get that deal in place. So in terms of us improving, or me improving, loads of things really. Just it's not necessarily a case of improving, it's just a case of evolving and always changing, always looking to evolve and improve on the shows, the experiences, the fights we're making, embracing digital media, embracing social media, and just learning and just continuing to grow and improve.
With Danny, is the plan if he gets by and if he wins greatly and wins impressively on April 28th, is the plan in your mind to try to push for either the rematch, the winner of Triple G and Canelo? Is that the plan in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons we joined HBO was to get the winner of Canelo against Golovkin. So we'll be pushing very hard for that. If Danny can beat Sulecki on April 28th, then we want the winner the week after, and that's very important to us. If we can't, the Charlo fight is a great fight as well, and I think if Danny can get past Sulecki, then really he wants a big marquee fight in his next fight, and I think Charlo is a good option, but ultimately we want the Canelo Triple G winner.
For the fans in the United States and around the world, Eddie, what exciting cards do you have coming up?
Well, we've got a big card at the O2 this Saturday with Dillian Whyte against Lucas Brown. It's a great heavyweight fight. I think it's the best heavyweight fight outside of the championship fights right now. We have 2 British title fights on the undercard as well for that. The week after, of course, massive unification fight between Anthony Joshua and Joseph Parker. We have Povetkin against Price on the card there. Just announced Anthony Crolla, Ryan Burnett defending his world title. We have a great young prospect called Josh Kelly fighting former world champion Carlos Molina. And then a couple of weeks after that, we have the return of Amir Khan against Phil LaGreco, trying to get back onto the world scene, Amir Khan. And then a week after that, we're in New York for Jacobs against Sulecki, Jarrell Miller against the Halpers, which is a very important fight, and also the debut of our new Kazakhstan gold medalist who's turning pro, Danny Aryalusinov. And then the week after, we've got Hay Bellew. So it's a mad few weeks coming up, and looking forward to the ride.
No, you got an exciting time coming up in boxing, and it's definitely a great time coming up with you at the helm, Eddie. And Eddie, thank you so much for the time today. I know you're busy, so it was nice.
Mate, great to talk to you.
I need a prediction. How does Anthony Joshua beat Joseph Parker?
I think it goes late, and I think it's a fight that's going to play out quite similar to the Klitschko fight, and I think Anthony Joshua stops him late on.
Eddie, thank you for the time, my friend. We'll talk soon. The best of luck next weekend.
Cheers, mate. Take care.
Take care.